Hello, everybody. Welcome to Link Live. Happy Wednesday. My name is Marina Mayer, Editor-in-Chief of Food Logistics and Supply and Demand Chain Executive, and I'm here with my lovely ladies. If you want to go around the room and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Brielle Jekyll. I'm the Associate Editor.
And I'm McKenna Morales, and I am the Assistant Editor.
And today we are tracking workforce development on the heels of yesterday's SCN Summit, with our supply chain professors, which, by the way, was amazing. We'll talk about that in a minute, because that's kind of what we're talking about today. So before we dive in, I just want to send a reminder. Nominations for Food Logistics Top 3PL and Cold Storage Providers closes May 23rd. I know that seems like it's far away, but it's really not. So I'll drop the link into the chat, but make sure you get those nominations in on time. Also, if you go to foodlogistics.com and secexec.com, we just published the registration link for our upcoming SCN Summit State of the Supply Chain Week, which kicks off June 7th. So make sure you register because we have tons of great sessions, tons of great industry experts lined up. You don't want to miss this event. So I'll get that into the chat as well. So let's talk workforce development. Supply chain education has become more paramount than ever, whether it's from training or to upskilling, to increasing diversity and inclusion in the supply chain workplace. These are all part of that workforce development topic. And many of today's companies are expanding and enhancing their workforce development efforts. But to do so, these companies need to work with local colleges and universities in order to network with young talent. And that's why we had our roundtable yesterday with these wonderful supply chain professors who donated their time, their expertise, their insights, and their good fortune to our SCN Summit to talk about all of these topics. We had Dr. Justin Goldston, the professor of project and supply chain management at Penn State University. We had Dr. Terry Esper, associate professor of logistics at the Ohio State University Fisher College of Business. We had Dr. Rod Thomas, director of the undergraduate supply chain management program from the University of Arkansas. And we had Dr. Eva Ponce, director of research on omnichannel distribution strategies for MIT Center for Transportation and Logistics. And I have to say, Brielle, I know you sat in on it yesterday. I don't know about you, but I just walked away with a whole new insight as to how this all works, not just currently present day, but how the workforce looks like in the future with regards to how students are learning, how companies are hiring, and how these teachers are working with the today's youth to get into that workforce. And we talked a lot about, I think it was omni education. We have omni-channel, which is kind of like the hybrid online and brick and mortar. And they're kind of doing that same thing with education. So Brielle, what kind of things did what kind of stood out for you from the conversation yesterday?
Well, I think it was exciting to hear because coming from my perspective, as I was a student about a decade ago, but
hey, I was longer, so we don't even want to hear from McKenna.
But right, don't even. But it was really nice to hear that the industry is kind of forced to embrace omni-channel learning because it's great. I mean, everyone learns differently. I think that was a huge thing that was talked about yesterday, was that how everyone learns differently. And so in the future, they're going to be catering to different students' learning. Like, you're going to be offered this array of choices. And obviously COVID is horrible, but there were some changes in the industry, not just the supply chain, but in the entire world and society in general, that are totally changing, that I think is for the better. And so in the future, students are going to be able to pick, would they rather do a hybrid class or a completely online class? And since COVID, I mean, online learning is 100% different than when I, was in school. When I was in school, I could take online classes, but it was nothing like it is today because everyone was forced to do it. So we had to innovate new ways of e-learning, and it's, so much more, I guess, involved and in depth now. And so if you are a more visual at-home learner instead of, being stuck in a classroom all day. I think it's great. I mean, I remember being stuck in a class and hardly like being cold and uncomfortable. So then I can't like pay attention, and all of this like great stuff I could be walking away with learning. I was frustrated because I was miserable that I just didn't, comprehend. So I think it's great. I think it's going to be a great future for students, especially in the supply chain.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, as they were talking, I kept looking at it from a parent standpoint because I had to deal with this all year and, sit down with my kids and make sure my kindergartner was not spinning in his chair. And, I mean, you guys sat in on all those meetings. You're like, what's that noise? I'm like, oh, he thinks his pencil is an airplane or, But my third grader just went in her room and did her thing. And, she just embraced it. And I think, it is not all things for all people. I think giving the options is kind of how our world operates now. I think that's how everybody operates. We want options of how we buy things, how we want them delivered to our house. We want them to pick up. We want options of colors of clothes and, things to do. And so I think options is the key to the future success of these workforce development. But one of the things that I really liked is how they talked about the importance of things like internships and how they want companies to work with them so that they can provide that pipeline of here are students who are doing really great in school. They really want some experience, whether it's hands-on or, as they say, hands-on online, whatever the case is. And so they're creating this pipeline so that it is a networking funnel for these students, so that when they have the internship, they can potentially land a job after college with that same company. And that company already knows how they operate and what their likes and dislikes are. Are they going to fit in with the company? I mean, internships for me, I always did internships. I never worked at any of them after the fact, but they're so important. And I thought that was so key. I know, McKenna, you write some of our professional development articles, and you have been talking to a lot of our award winners about workforce development. So what are some things that you kind of take away from this?
Yeah, so one of the questions that I always ask the award winner when we do these videos is, what advice do you have for those, Tootsie in the background, what advice do you have for those who are just starting out in the industry? Because a lot of the people that we are talking to, they're older. They're significantly older.
I think everybody's older than you.
But I always ask them, what's some good advice? Because this advice could benefit me. It could benefit like new people that are coming into the industry. And they always say, be a sponge. Mm-hmm. And I remember I messaged you guys one day because I did like 6 interviews in 2 days. And I'm like, all these people have said, be a sponge. And it's really just absorbing as much as you can. And that is why I think internships are also really beneficial and honestly should be mandatory in order to graduate from your school, because people are saying how colleges don't really prepare them, especially in the time of online schooling. It's a little bit harder to feel more ready for the real world, but when you have internships and you're able to learn things hands-on, it helps so much more. And then the whole be a sponge thing and absorbing as much information, you have to just be curious. You have to stay curious, and you have to ask the good questions and want to know what you're learning about and if there's anything more that you can do.
Well, and I think that's important to understand that because we talk to a lot of trucking companies who say, oh, they're dealing with this driver shortage, but they don't know some of them don't know how to fill that gap. They don't know where to start. And then we talk to the 3PLs, and then we'll talk to, like these professors who are like, let's work together. Let's make this so that these young folks understand what this job is about and what, their role is. And one of the things that they touch on is, you don't have to be a supply chain manager to be in the supply chain. You can be a finance major. You can be an HR manager. I know that when we did like 5 or 6 polls, and one of them talked about like what is most important. And somebody said, well, we require our people to have law degrees if they want to enter in, because they deal with a lot of risk mitigation and risk management. And, you think about it outside and it's like, wow, that's really interesting. I never would have thought of that. I'm trying to pull up one of the poll questions now as we are talking, because I wanted to refer to it. And of course,
Well, just
everything is moving slow. So continue.
I just have something to add to that. And this is something that I talk about with the award winners all the time too, is that the industry is just so broad as well. Like, you don't have to pigeonhole yourself to just one area. You can bounce around the different sectors and find a place to call home.
Right. So one of the questions that we asked was, how do you see your employees learning in the next 5 to 10 years? And 56.3% of the attendees online in person said that they prefer in-person hands-on training provided by the company. So they don't mind being in person. They just want the tools from the company to be able to learn and improve and enhance their job. And I know when COVID hit, that was such a big discussion we all had with companies was, you know, here you have your veterans, your folks that have been with you from day one. But they don't understand the technology. They haven't been trained to incorporate that kind of technology. So you need to be able to not leave them in the dark and bring them and elevate them to where everybody else is so that they have a shot of staying with the company and being with you for the future. One of the other polls we asked was, what are some of the main things companies should be focusing on in order to attract new talent? And the options were diversity and inclusion. We had environmental, social, and corporate responsibility. We had flexible work-life balance, providing the right training, and all of the above. Well, all of the above won, which is good to know. But 26.1% said they prefer a flexible work-life balance. And I think that goes back to the omni education part, being all things to all people, is being able to allow people the freedom to, hey, you have a job to do your job. And if you need to leave early or come in late or take an extra hour to do this, you can, because you did your job. It's no longer that stringent 9 to 5, situation. Brielle, you talked to a lot of these 3PL guys for your articles for food logistics. I can't remember if you have anything on workforce development coming up, but I know it is something that you do talk to them about. So what are some things that you're seeing for the 3PL driving side? My camera's really blurry all of a sudden. I apologize. I don't know. It's same stuff, different day. I don't know.
Yeah. So obviously, driver retention is a huge thing we talk about. Please don't. I talk about driver retention a lot. And I recently did an onboarding thing. It's really just first of all, you need to make an environment that people are happy in. Just because you're giving somebody a paycheck doesn't mean that you can make their lives miserable and, dominate their entire life. I think about where I am now, and I'm so happy that this job offered me remote, because I wouldn't have, been in this situation. I'm not moving to Wisconsin. So I wouldn't be able to have taken this job if I wasn't offered remote. So I think just being flexible and catering to your employees' needs just really opens up a whole opportunity of new talent, first of all. Specifically for drivers, it's hard because there's the driver shortage. So 3PLs and trucking companies are really trying to look at innovative ways to take on to onboard people. And a huge part of that is technology. The training processes today are completely different than they were years ago. There's so much technology involved and a lot of I guess I would say the thing.
What happened?
The thing. It was the thing.
The driving? The steering wheel?
Yeah, not being in the truck.
Way too long.
Being in a pretend truck. Simulation.
A simulator.
Oh.
I had no idea where you were going with that.
I was talking, and then I realized I didn't remember the word for it, and I was I don't know what to do.
It's really just Brielle's been in too many meetings with me, and so I'm rubbing off on her because I call things different things, and I don't even think about it until you guys start laughing.
I feel I always forget the words for things. It's bad. But yeah, so there's a lot of simulation, there's a lot of technology involved, and I think that the technology of the trucks in general is also helping. I have a interview for Link Educate right after this on the driver shortage and how companies are trying to offset that. But as far as I know, right now, the technologies in the trucks help a little bit because it's becoming a little more high tech. So, it's more comfortable, it's safer for, you to stay overnight in the truck, on long hauls. So that's kind of more enticing to people. But yeah, it's just like really about listening to the employees and making a whole culture that is inclusive in not just like diverse standards, but in terms of like lifestyle and how people work.
That is something that I talked with Ed Bowersox in one of our videos, the award videos. So you can find my video interview with him on food logistics and on SDCE. So if
Love it.
A collaborative and inclusive company culture. And I think that's really important too, because I know we mentioned this a few weeks ago, but when we had Terry Esper on Link Live, we had like the best conversation offline.
Right.
And he said it's the future generation that is gonna walk into interviews and ask the hard questions of where does your company stand on this social issue and where do they stand on this? And I think it's true, especially for work-life balance. I have a friend that I went to school with who just quit her job because there was no work-life balance. And I think the younger people are really going to shift these old school methods to make it more I wouldn't even say lax, but just a better environment for everyone involved.
Yeah. Right. I mean, what's the point in saying no, you can't work from home and all these strict and when you get the job done at the same, if not better, like when people are happy and doing what they want to do. And one thing that Terry said yesterday was that he reiterated that how people won't, not only are they asking these questions, they're looking for companies that fit those ideologies. So like if you're really interested in sustainability, you're not going to work for a company that's not doing those things. Right. And, the same goes for diversity and social justice issues. If you're a company that's not, taking on these issues or is even doing the opposite, like you're not going to get that incoming talent.
Right. Because the supply chain affects people. That's what it impacts every single person, and the bottom line is the person. And if your company isn't going to cater to your employees to make them safe and comfortable, then you're not going to have a lot of them or a lot of happy ones.
Well, and then Rod even kind of touched on it too, because he was kind of like, these days, the younger folks, they have a longer checklist of things they want out of a company before they join a job. He even said, I've had students come to me and say, I turned down this job because they don't believe in the same beliefs that I do, or they don't, they're not as environmental as I want them to be. Where back in the day when I was younger looking for jobs, it was like, hey, how many vacation days do I get? Like that was what I was concerned about. Do I have good benefits? They're still concerned about that, but the list is a lot longer. They have more, if they're going to invest their time and work for a company and help support them and grow them, they want to make sure that they're all in line from top to bottom. And I think that holds a lot of companies accountable. And I think that's why sustainability has continued to be a top performing topic across the board, because these companies have to follow suit on that. I know one of the things, Brielle, you talked about technologies. One of the questions we asked in the polls yesterday was, what supply chain topics is your company looking for in new talent? And who tied for 18.2% total was warehouse management and strategic sourcing and procurement. So those are where these companies are looking for new talent to fill a role that is helping their warehouse management section or their procurement department, whatever the case is. And that goes back to what they were saying. You don't necessarily have to major in supply chain. You can major in something like sourcing or business finance or whatever the case is, and have a concentration on something else. And these professors, the reason I picked these four was obviously their schedule was available, but two, because I have a special soft spot in my heart for each of them, because they do believe in the same things we believe as a brand, and they do, work together to help the better good. They're helping students who don't even attend their schools. They're helping, people who just want to be a part of the supply chain group because that's what they want to do. And, I just felt that the topic and the conversation and the four of them together, two of them had already known each other, but the four of them overall just met. And none of you were on the pre-call with me, but I just sat there and just watched them all converse and have a conversation about supply chain and talk about not something on live. Like I should have just hit record because it was that great of, the camaraderie that they had. And I think that that's indicative of how, this profession is and this industry is. So I thought it was a very good discussion. And I myself, we could have talked for another hour. And the questions we had from the audience kept rolling in. We didn't even get a chance to get to finish them. So for those of you watching, I did put the link for the on-demand in the chat. You can register to attend on demand at your own leisure. And then I also put the link to our SCN Summit, State of the Supply Chain Week. So you can start to register for those sessions. You can register for 1, 2, or all of them. I suggest all of them, but do what you want. Just thought I'd plug that in there. And then why am I blurry? I think it's when I move that I get blurry, but why would that do that?
You get out of focus.
It's trying to focus on you. So when you are moving, the camera's like, what do I focus on?
Okay, I'll sit very still. Okay, I don't know how to do that, but okay. So anyways, well, thank you both for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you to our supply chain professors yesterday for your time and investment and your insight and everything, because I thought it was very educational. And thank you to everybody who attended. We had a huge attendee list, so I'm very excited about that. So hopefully we'll see you at our next SCN Summit. And hopefully we'll see you next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central. You can turn into Link Live. So make sure you go to foodlogistics.com, sdcexec.com, like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you download our Link podcast channel and our Link Educate. And we will see you next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central. Bye-bye.